Good afternoon. It is June 18th, 2024. You're listening to a Little Column A, Little Column B, hosted by Will Levinos and co-hosted by Zach Bishop. How are you doing today, buddy?
What is going on, Will? The Celtics are world champions for the 2023-2024 seasons. We've been right there. We've been right on the cusp so many times. It's been a good amount of the same guys. It's the Jays. I've been the main ones all the way through. But finally, last night, we broke through. Not only do we break through, I get to pat myself on the back going into the series. I said Celtics in 5. You thought that's way too short. But sure enough, it was Celtics in 5. We were up 2-0 last time we were talking. And, there was a little bit of a bump. But, I mean, we took care of business in this series.
I think that's how it's going to be remembered. I think this team analytically is always going to be a little separate from everyone else, even if there's perhaps an easier route of journey to the finals. But overall, I think it was a successful, more or less dominant season from the Boston Celtics. There's really no other way you could say it. Now, this is hard. These injuries, they happen every year. So everyone acting like every finals champion goes through every single healthy team every year is just not true. There's
I think
always
it's more
something.
unlikely than likely.
Yeah, so I think it's an easy thing to pick apart, but it's also something you can pick apart every single year. That being said, let's recap a couple of the earlier games. We only do podcasts once a week. When we left you, we were up 2-0. We were heading to Game 3. And Game 3 was probably the best game of the finals. There really wasn't that entertaining with finals, if I'm being quite honest with you. It was nothing but stress for Celtics fans and probably not the most appealing games for non-Celtics fans. Game 3 is going to be known as the historic Luka fouls out game, of which there's a whole lot of drama with all that. I think it boils down to a lot more of Luka getting called for fouls and playing a little lazy defense. There's plenty of examples to that. What will you remember Game 3 as?
I will remember it as I watched it at a biker bar up at Laconia, and it was a sports bar. It had a ton of TVs playing the Celtics game, but was very odd to get locked in. This is a finals game, and then all of a sudden be hearing loud motorcycles be going past and have to kind of remind yourself where you were. But for the game specific, this game until midway, later in the third, this game was back and forth. No team was really taking a lead, and then finally we were just able to stretch the lead out, and then in the fourth, all of a sudden that lead came crashing all the way down. And just like you mentioned, it's the Luka fouls out game. And Ryan Russillo likes to joke about this of saying, hey, if you're gonna say the NFL is rigged, the NBA is rigged, you got to point out the times where it's not rigged. You would think if the NBA was rigged, what's one of the last things that you want to do? In a one-possession game, have the best player on the Mavericks foul out. But he fouled out in a hurry. And the last one, why did he even put himself in that situation? They had to challenge it because it's Luka, and once he's out, you figure you guys are they're toast anyway. But he wasn't set. It just maybe he gets away with that. In the regular season, it doesn't get reviewed. It's both guys kind of hit into each other. But definitely on review, it's no, man. You weren't in legal defensive guarding position, and yeah, that's the way you're going to go out.
There's easy mistakes to point at for Luka for that. He still had an incredible game, and he had an incredible series. I think that specific game, Game 3. Dallas is up 51-50 at half, so this is tight. It isn't until the third quarter where Boston goes 35-19 in the third against them. And then, like you said, a quick counter in the fourth. It's 29-21 Dallas, and we're back in this game.
For sure, something I remember from Game 3 is Kyrie Irving coming alive. Both games in Boston, and then later on you see in Boston just absolutely struggles on the road, but then in the home. And you knew, I think we probably talked about it on the podcast, say at some point Kyrie's going to play well. He's too good of a player to just keep throwing up these duds. And yeah, just absolutely, put up a nice stat line.
Boston got the job done on the road. We end up going up 3-0, changes the series entirely. I actually think it changes Game 4 even more. the whole news media, everybody's covering Luka fouling out. You can go back and see some really bad fouls that are just inexcusable. I think the fouling out in Game 3, not only did they force the challenge, but they needed that challenge moments later. They could have actually challenged a real play they had a chance at, and this is just a long shot of trying to keep Luke in the game, which I think that was a wasted of a challenge. I don't know what the etiquette should be. Like, your best player fouls out, or do you want to just defaultly always do that, even if you know the guy behind the bench? The guy behind the bench said, "There's no fucking way. Like, we're not getting this. Why are we? What are we wasting?"
I think you have to, both politically, and you got to do anything you can to try to keep your best player. Where I don't think it was 50-50, but it wasn't like just like a 1% chance, and kind of a force it, put it into the hands of the officials, like make them extra focus on trying to get rid of them.
Dallas gets this down to a one-possession game, and there's an easy P.J. Washington victory challenge they could have had if they had had a challenge. They did not, and that was just enough of a margin I thought it was for Boston to win this. Look, at the end of the day, Luka can't foul out. This team's too dependent on him, the workload that he's handling. I mean, 4 minutes left in a game fouling out. Do you think Dallas would have won this game if he was in those 4 minutes?
No.
Really? Because I disagree
we
entirely.
have been, despite, and it keeps getting overshadowed this year because of the struggles last year against Miami. I mean, pretty much it's Miami. But besides that, our crunch time offense was awesome. And, you could chalk it up for the, for the playoffs, saying, oh, well, we didn't have to play anybody. But I think that we were executing. I think we were doing what we needed to do. I guess the one wrinkle would be in this situation, and this will be something that's big in Game 3 that I don't think we knew coming on the pod last week, was no Porzingis. Porzingis got hurt at the end of Game 2, and then it was like the news seemed to be like he's going to be fine, and then the next day was he's not going to be fine. It's a serious injury, and then the Celtics come out with the medical term for what was wrong, and then you find out it's only 6 people have had this injury since the Civil War or something crazy. So, Game 3 was where we knew he wasn't going to play. So I think even without Porzingis, I think we knew what we were doing. Every game, pretty much, except maybe yesterday, but majority of the games, Luka would come out hot. He'd score a bunch of points in the first half, and then he'd absolutely run out of gas in the second half. The entire game, he could not stay in front of anybody. And I think in crunch time, maybe he was able to hit some difficult shots, but we forced him and Kyrie all game long to really earn those shots. Where a lot more often, whoever Luka was guarding, we were able to just blow right by him. And I would like to think that a majority of the time, even if Luka's playing, it's just going to be easier for us to get to our spots than it was for them, and that would just be a recipe for success for us.
I think this is going to not only be remembered as the Luka fouls out game, but perhaps the Brian Windhorst calls out arguably the best player in the league. Immediately post-game, no hesitation, has already digested all of his thoughts and just lets him have it. And I thought it was fair criticism. I thought it was maybe delivered a little over-enthusiastically to make it sound like it was the end of the world. But, really, it was. This is a team that made a whole bunch of moves that didn't make the playoffs last year, that has Luka and Kyrie doing awesome things and is now in the finals and coming up short. So it was literally the end of the world once you go down 3-0. So I think it's going to be remembered as that. You got any comments on Windy making moves like this? It's very unusual. He isn't exactly that's not generally the type of headlines he's going for.
I agree. This seemed something more along the lines of Stephen A. or the morning shows, not the show immediately afterwards. I think it just shows how we brought it up, but how crucial it was of, if you are the star, if you're angling to be, I am the best player in the NBA, you can't foul out. You have to realize what you're doing. You have to realize earlier in the game, that last foul, you could argue that one was kind of close, but there were some other ones. They were just silly, you're tired fouls. The one on Peyton Pritchard. Like, just what are you doing? You got to realize, yes, it's early in the game. Most of the time, this doesn't impact you, but this is not the time, or this is not the game to be getting stupid fouls.
Well, I do think
we gave Cat a hard time about this, in previous rounds, where you're just watching him going, dude, do you just not realize what you're doing? You're arguing, but these are all automatic fouls, and you know you've been getting in foul trouble. Like, how are you just not aware?
The one thing I will separate between the two is Cat had some fouls off of the tip, like off of the jump. Within 10 seconds of the game starting, he's starting the game with a foul. It's Luka. It felt like it would build, and it would be a frustration of him just trying to cool himself out, trying not to complain as much, and then it would boil to a point where we're either frustrating him or he's not getting the calls, and he couldn't contain himself. So it would be a slow grow versus Cat would come in. I don't know if he's just too amped at the start or what, or how you handle intensity. I mean, even the Celtics, these, I'll call them closeout games, in game 4 and 5. I mean, they come out there with some real nervous energy of just, we know how important this is. We're taking this super seriously, to the point I thought they were stiff. Like they just weren't loose or relaxed. And eventually, once you get into the game, you start taking some punches from Luka and Kyrie, you kind of wake up a little bit. But game 4 was a complete alteration, I thought, from the Luka drama, where they were officiated completely different. All of the fouls, the silly things that Luka made and was called for in game 3, he was not called for in game 4 and got away with, in my opinion. I thought he was way more handsy and way more physical, if not just as much in game 3, and they just didn't call it. And in Boston, I just didn't handle it well, and this was a disaster and a painful watch. Side note of game 4, Porzingis is active in this one. He plays 0 minutes, but it is reported before the game that it's a break in case of emergency. Was that like literally the exact words that Mazzulla uses?
No, he said he could be used in I think it might have been signaled like it was either in a very or in very specific situations. So no one has really elaborated on that. The only really elaboration I've heard is more the joking podcast saying, yeah, well, if the Celtics were blowing him out with 3 minutes to go, would put him in just to say, oh, he got to play in the closeout game. The only thing I could think of is if like Al and somebody else was in foul trouble, and now it's the third guy, or if it was really a very special situation of we're up 1 point. They're about to toss the ball in, and we want to put him on the ball to have, a huge guy guarding the inbounds, like we used to do with Taco Fall. Maybe that they did not really elaborate.
Game 4 does not go our way. What I will say, we played 5 games. We won 4 of them. Out of all the 5 games, I don't think either team really shot well, other than Dallas shooting well in game 4. We managed to win 4 wins without, in my opinion, playing well. Like that's just great. Like, this was the one game where Dallas showed up. All the extra guys all made their extra shots, and corner threes were falling, and they were just running. I mean, they put up 122 points in this game. They barely broke 100 every other game. That's how I'm going to remember this game.
They didn't break 100 in any of the other games. They didn't break 90 in a couple of those.
This was the 122. They finally get a win. I mean, you're not going to win. You shouldn't win a finals game not scoring 100 points. I say that all the time,
especially against us.
That being said, game 4 was just excruciating pain. It's like there's nothing really to worry about with. I'm hearing everyone else talk about how no one's ever blown a 3-0 lead, and then there's some other like voodoo trick that some other coaches tell. Well, it's 3-1 now. People have done 3-1 before. It's like I don't know how that you just flipped it on me, but now I'm completely panicked of game 5. We have home court advantage going forward. There's really no reason we should be nervous, but there's
3 chances.
There's just this nervous energy with Boston of trying to close anything out, where it just like you have to trust the analytics down to the last second for us to just edge ahead. And it's just stressful to watch because it's never as comfortable of a lead as you ever want. And I go into game 5 thinking anything can happen. Luka and Kyrie could have another incredible game where they both just score, and we could just continue to be ice cold from 3. What were you thinking coming into game 5?
I was thinking game 4 was a throwaway. It's tough when you go up 3-0 because that almost feels like you won the championship because no other teams ever come back. I mean, all year long, how often did we even lose 2 games in a row? We did not have very many losing streaks this year. So you think there's just no way. There's no way that we're going to lose 4 times in a row. But you want to close it out. But I was able to write off the Friday loss. 38 points. It's just so many, but it only counts as 1 loss. So it was just, we didn't have it. All the starters got to rest the whole 4th quarter, and just knowing we're coming back to Boston, it's going to be, I think we've seen this in other finals of the teams up, had an opportunity, but you know what? Go home, win it at home in front of the home fans. you know, all the good things that come along with that. So I felt confident coming in. Looking at it, I think we were a 6.5 point favorite, and then I was starting to see that Porzingis was warming up. Then it got mentioned that he was going to be active, but I assumed it was going to be like game 4 of he's active, but he's not going to play. So once I saw Porzingis, coming in and doing the pregame warm up, I felt even better.
They definitely played into the theater of all that. He comes in late. The crowd comes just as a shock and an appeal, almost like, all right, he's here, he's shooting, he's playing.
They did the same thing in game 1 and game 2.
He was not good. In all honesty, he didn't have it. I thought he looked like a vulnerable victim out there, just waiting to be attacked defensively. He had a little hobble to him. That little slowness, I thought, made him a little bit more predictable, a little bit more easier to control, and just a liability on defense. That being said,
see, this is what I was expecting from him when we were coming into this finals, because remember, he had the calf injury before this new weird ankle injury that I still don't fully understand. And I had said, we don't need, 100% Porzingis. If we can get, 80%, or maybe if it's even a little bit less, just to give Al a break. And so you look at the minutes. Yesterday, Al only had to play, was able to get taken out a little bit early, but really not, that much. Only had to play 32, where Porzingis played 16. And for sure, you could see he was not what he was in game 1 and in game 2. But I think even him just being able to gut it out there, I think that really helped the team.
Definitely a tough guy resume addition for him. It's a good thing he needed it in some ways. And not only did he get the ring, he gets a little bit more credit for actually being there. All right, back to the game. In the start of the game, Josh Green starts the game. He goes 2 for 2 from 3. Dante Exum hits a 3. Luka is doing like crazy around the head back passes to guys in corners. Kyrie is doing crazy cool like just scoop shots, and somehow they're just not. It's not going in. It's not working. But the role players have showed up early in this game, and I am nervous that is the difference maker. That is what we have an advantage on. Is I think we have more depth. If Dallas's depth shows up, that advantage I think disappears a little bit. And then Zinger comes in like a little shaky. This was a little bit more of a game than this score is going to reflect. And I think if you go back and say, what if Dallas took care of business game 3? They're definitely in this one. I think a little bit longer, but I think.
But I think if they win in game 3, game 4 turns out differently.
We don't know. This is a game of couple dribbles here and there.
Sports.
I thought Sam Hauser was awesome, specifically on defense. Again, I don't think he's getting enough credit for all that. I know he's got a quick trigger on the 3, and they're talking about like how how fast he can shoot it, and it's great. The defense, awesome.
I think it just helps that he's got a little bit of size, and he tries. I mean, he stole it from Luka in game 1, but I think in other situations that we've been in, we had like Isaiah Thomas. It's like there's just no amount of effort. He's just so much smaller. Where Hauser, it's just like there's like just a little beat on the bones there. So it's a little harder to get past him. He can use his body at least a little bit on defense. He's not a complete zero on defense.
I thought Al had a little extra zip to him last night, a little extra hustle, a little extra speed, a little extra desperation, as well as like this is it. Just I can't do another 30-minute game. Let's just get this over with. Great stuff there. We'll talk a little bit later with the legacies of all that. I think Horford is just kind of jumped into another echelon just doing all of this. We have the Derek White teeth smash into the floor where his front tooth is the amount of dental work that this is going to take. I mean, it's going to be hours of work. He's going to be out for some of this offseason just trying to get that stuff done.
Is that the same tooth from last year, though? Is that a fake tooth?
Oh, is that why it was a little bit more fragile? It wasn't a real tooth?
No, I'm not sure, but remember last year in the Miami series, he got hit in the face, and I believe it got chipped there too.
Look, the hustle, I just felt like KG was there in spirit because now he's got blood on him. He's coming right back. He's not even coming out of the game. He stayed in the game.
That had to hurt so much.
Dude, there's no way his teeth was ever. They weren't that crooked to start the game. They weren't. I mean, maybe
No.
you could show me a million pictures and angles of it. I don't ever remember him looking that way. Like that one tooth was completely in a different direction.
Then he shoots 50% from three. Just what a day. What a day for him. And then in the fourth, he blocks Lively at the hoop. And then I sent you the the stat, and it's become a running joke on the podcast. But he led the team in blocks, the entire team, not the guards on the team, the entire team in the finals.
It was a difference maker. This is an addition. We'll talk a little bit after about some of the changes that Dallas and Boston could make going into the next season. I think every team could immediately be improved by having a guy like Derek White on their team. Like if you put him on Dallas's team, they're a little bit scarier, having a little bit more of a third weapon like him.
Oh, big time.
That's a huge, especially defensively. You just make up for a whole bunch of liabilities without giving anything up. I thought Pritchard making the half court shot was almost career saving for him because I didn't think he played very well in the finals, but I did think there was a reason we played him, and that was the reason. As well as earlier in the first quarter, I think Exum just dribbled it out at the end of the quarter. It was like, well, there's a huge swing right there. The other team is not even taking a chance. I don't know if it's still statistics that he's worried about, hurting his awful shooting percentage already, but Pritchard wasn't shy about it at all.
Wanted it. He wanted it, and that was his second buzzer beater of the finals.
The only guy we haven't talked.
Why would you not? Why would you not be launching? Maybe in the regular season, I don't know. It seems like it's so easy now with the shot spectrum that you could just easily, in any the negotiations, like the GMs going, oh well, 39.2% versus 39.1%. Oh, that's gonna make a huge difference. But wanting to win, I think that's more important.
I think if you had a ring on your finger, it wouldn't matter what your percentage is. It's just like, hey,
right.
I make differences. I win games. I'm able to do that.
That's when I really was ready to open up the confidence level when Pritchard hit that three, because we were up like high single digits, and then was able to close it out, and then it was on a Luka missed free throw where he again just not a lot of free throws getting made. So he misses it, and then Pritchard hits a legit half court swish, and the team was all fired up. A 4-point swing to push it over 20 points going into the second half, and now you have the cushion. Now you have the cushion for sure. You can it got closer than that, but now you're going into a 20-point with a 20-point lead. That's a pretty big sword you can swing around.
Now the margin, it wasn't as bad in the second half, where if we go quarter by quarter here, Boston's winning in the first 28-18. Second quarter we win 39-28, and then just whatever Boston tradition it is in the third and the fourth, it's 19-21 Dallas, 20-21 Dallas. It's like, I know we lose only by a point there, but there is a different pace of dominance that this team has, where it's like they just float with this lead, and it's just teetering until the game's over or we gave up the lead. It's I'm very happy that it's over. Like, you were all fired up after we won all of this. I was just happy to exhale, being like, okay, we didn't blow the 3-0 lead. We weren't that team. We aren't the team that's going to be remembered for any sort of embarrassment anymore. We are now the team that has been in this for so many years and finally won one against a team that everyone was willing to dominate, one of the best backcourts of all time, Kyrie and Luka, and we beat them. I'm happy with that, but man, it was a relief, not a joy. You might still be joyous, but I'm just relieved.
I could see where you're coming from, because we've been lucky enough to have multiple championships, and this specific team in the past, it keeps getting hammered home on how many Eastern Conference Finals we've made, and as if it's a disappointment. But I would say the majority of those, we've talked about this before, the majority of those we overachieved. So at the end of the year, it wasn't, oh man, like we only made the Eastern Conference Finals. It was like, wow, well, wasn't expecting that. Kind of thought we were going to get knocked out first round. Like, okay. This was the first year coming in, and we've mentioned it since October, of we have to win this year. like unless there's like an injury, if we don't come out and win this thing, like now we've underperformed for sure. And last year we underperformed against Miami. That was bad. I still don't understand how that happened. So I can see where you're saying that, especially for this, you know, finally breaking through, that it was a relief, not a, because if we had won in 2022 against the Warriors, we weren't expected to win that finals. Even going up 2-1, there was hope, I think, from Boston, but I think in general it was still like, no, the Warriors, they've done this too many times. They know what they're doing. That would have been more of a, underdog story. But we're also, despite what we were this year, all that Miami stuff from the past years has still been like following us around, and we're not at that Tom Brady Patriots swagger of just knowing, oh, we're coming in, we're going to win. Like, it's not a relief that we won. It's like we came in, we knew we were going to win. We got Tom Brady. What did you think was going to happen?
I think the only way Boston's ever going to continue to win more championships, and I think this applies specifically to this championship as well, is we need to have multiple guys be considered for the MVP. I think if we have one unanimous guy, that means we're not going to win. Like if Tatum was the only guy that showed up for this whole team, which he's capable of, I'm not trying to limit him. I know some people are picking on him for not having the strongest finals. He was awesome yesterday. Tons of assists, Jokic type of playmaking, just drawing doubles, kicking, finding people, doing all sorts of stuff. But I'm sure he got some MVP votes. Obviously, Jaylen got it because he won. I'm sure Drew might have even gotten a couple votes. I think after game 2, even last week we were talking, like he was our best player. That's the strength of this team. I think this award is a little silly, and they have to give it to someone. But I think as long as we have multiple guys competing for that award, we're going to be a really, really hard team to win. And that being said, you had Tatum as winning the MVP. You felt pretty confident with that. I had Jaylen locked in from last week. Do you think they got it right, or would you have swapped this around somehow?
I think it was very close. It was similar to the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Tatum led the team in the finals in points, rebounds, and assists, and he is the first player to do that and not win the Finals MVP. But I think it was close. I think that his percentages weren't up to his normal level, but I think what he was able to do, and I think this is going to very much help him and the team going forward, is realizing, okay, when do I need to push the gas and be a scorer? And when do I need I don't know what the other thing would be, of like, because this wouldn't be the break, but it's a different gas pedal for getting the assists. He had way more assists in these finals than I think he normally does. And he also upped his drives a ton. So I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it might have been almost double in the finals how many times he drove to the hoop versus what he did during the regular season. And I think that is a testament to what kind of shape he was in. Where we're seeing Luka and there's other guys, you wonder like, are these guys really in the best shape? Where for entire games, Luka, even when Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard was out there, specifically wanted to get Tatum in the mix on defense. I think the same way we wanted to get Luka in the mix to just tire him out a little bit. So Jaylen was definitely the main defender and was able to do a very good job on limiting Luka and really making him work. But I think that Tatum, I think going forward, I think is going to help a bunch. But I am fine with saying Brown. Brown, he for sure earned it because of the defensive component of it. Now, you mentioned a little bit before, and this was more coming into the series where Joker got beat, so he can't be the best player in the league. But now Luka, he's the guy. He's the best player. Who do you think, if you could, like, who's the best player in the series?
In this series, Luka.
I say there's no way. He got blown by every time. I think offensively, you could for sure. I think Luka was the best offensive guy out there, both with his playmaking, his ability. Even though, midway through the game last night, he was like 1 for 22 going back on 3-pointers, where it drives you crazy, the Tatum shots. But it wasn't like Luka was some guy that was on fire. But he could not stay in front of anybody, and I just think that half of basketball is defense, and it's not football. You just don't come out on defense, and there's a whole new team that comes in, and I've been hearing it a little bit about, Luka, best player, and it's driving me crazy because you have to play defense. If you're not, you're hurting your team.
It's not even close. It's not even a conversation. It's really not. Lucas is so much more superior in his abilities to affect the game more. I know the defense is easy to pick apart, but you know what? Nobody was really able to guard the Celtics this way. All right, show me the guys that really were just able to slow us down. Those are the games we lost where we had bad shooting nights. Reality is Luka got embarrassed because there's so many other angles we can hit you from. It didn't matter. There was nowhere to hide him. There's nowhere to hide any of these guys.
But that's a problem. That's a problem. If you're the best, I'm not saying like all-star, like this thing. If you're wait a minute, you're the best one. This is a little bit of the the Rudy Gobert thing where it's like, you see him get cooked by Luka, and it's like, this is your defensive player of the year kind of deal, where it's like you're saying, the Celtics were really good, could attack him from multiple angles. But I'm just saying, so the absolute best guy in the league has to be hidden on defense.
Yeah, Curry was for how many years? That's a whole fucking dynasty right there. He had to add Kevin Durant to win one. I mean, this is nuts. Like, I think it's an offensive game that you got to put the ball in the hoop. All right, defense is great, and it certainly leads to championships. But if you're saying who can handle the largest load and impact the team in the biggest way, it's Luka. You strip away these rosters, tell me which guys you want to have. If you could add Luka to the Celtics and swap him with Tatum, it's not like we're suddenly a bad defensive team. He would be fine over there. He'd be adequate. We could hide him in Boston. I just think he has way more of an impact, and the workload on his shoulders for this entire series is something I don't think anybody in Boston could do. I don't think they could.
I just think it's a concern if you're saying, if the argument that he's the best and you have to hide him on defense, and it's even more than just hide him. I mean, the blow bys where that's not even okay. You're having some problems, and what was it in Game 3? I mean, he had his controller fell asleep, and Jaylen just ran right past him, and he just absolutely, like, it was like the comical Harden videos that we've seen before, and this is in a finals game. So I'm for sure biased, but it just seems like awesome on offense, but when you're that bad on defense, there has to be some sort of serious talk about it.
I don't think it's nearly as bad as everyone's making it out to be defensively. Look, it's not great. You're not going to teach a class based on Luka's defensive highlights. They're just not there. But I think he's qualified enough to be a team defender, and as long as your team is strong enough on the other perimeters, Kyrie's not a strength here either. He's playing with a weakness out there, so that's another thing. The other thing is he's a way bigger guy. He's not going to move the same way. All those strengths and size that he has on offense certainly don't come back on the defensive end. He's going to match up better with certain guys. He's not going to be able to match up with certain guys. There's limits to it, but I don't think he's so bad of a defender that he can't be on like a championship defense. I think he still can be. I mean, it's just hard. It's hard when you don't have the same ammo. I mean, he doesn't have the same bench. We could talk right now, but what do you think the team should do differently? I mean, they need to add Derek White and Drew Holiday is what they need to have happen to this team. They have two guys that are awesome.
That's fair too. If we're talking about the entire team, they were a 5 seed that made the finals, and they beat some really good teams along the way. So once you get to the finals, you're like, all right, well now we got a chance, and look how well how well our stars are playing. So you start talking yourself into it. But if you had talked, I think, to any Mavs fan before the playoffs started and said, hey, would you be happy if your team made it to the finals? I think every one of them would be like, yes, absolutely. So yeah, I'm not trying to knock the whole team. It was just trying to knock down the Luka is far and away the best player in the NBA right now, and it's not even an argument, and don't even bother talking about it. I'm just not trying to say it's not absolutely true. I'm just trying to just knock it down just a little bit, just more into the range of regular people.
I know Jokic hasn't been in the playoffs in weeks now, but I still think he's the best player in the league, or at least if I were to
over Giannis.
I mean, based on
that's
injury.
Another thing. It's all this "what have you done for me lately" sort of thing. So it's just, well, we haven't seen Joker in a while, and we haven't seen Giannis before that. You can kind of keep going back. I mean, it was a few weeks ago that Anthony Edwards was basically Michael Jordan, and I had to try to. I was saying, I'm not trying to be a hater about this. I'm just trying to bring this argument down a little bit. Of yes, this is awesome what he's doing, but this is very short term right now, and let's just everybody calm down.
Well, I mean, we're never going to agree on all of the rankings of everyone. I think it's more of like, all right, how do we universally feel comfortable on any of the rankings? I think Jokic has proved over the last couple of years that he's really good. He's really hard to beat. And then when Anthony Edwards had some games where it was like, wow, he's outplaying him. It was all right. Well, how can you not and it wasn't like Jokic played bad. He just got outplayed. That was more of why we were giving him that shine. Otherwise we'd be talking about this right now. Like we'd be picking apart Jokic, being like, oh, his defense wasn't that good, or he wasn't good enough to slow this down, or he couldn't control Naz Reid. Nobody's saying any of that because he's still a really good player. We're just overanalyzing Luka and picking apart, some officials' complaints and perhaps not the greatest effort defensively and a little lack of focus here and there on some backdoor cuts. But other than that, I mean, these guys are doing stuff that you would wish every team wishes they had, and every team would have a better chance of winning if they did have those guys. So I don't think there's anything to really take away. I mean, there's no perfect player. I mean, we could talk about some of the weaknesses of Jaylen Brown and Tatum. If they don't have the team aspect of all of this, we look like the way Dallas lost this year. If it's just those two guys again, we've
seen that before. But we got Danny Ainge made the moves to get these guys, and then Brad Stevens, finished the alley-oop and made sure to get the guys around him that we needed.
Well, that's part of it, is that this team was built so that we wouldn't have to depend on two guys to score 30 points every game, and we'd have 4 or 6 guys that maybe could score 30 points in a game. It's a way easier workload, and it worked out.
The season, it did.
It worked out beautifully. I just think if you're Dallas, what would you change for next year? It's like you just need to add more depth, and it's how do you do that? There's no way you can match the moves that Boston's made. Those are so hard to make. The value in Derek White, the value in getting Porzingis. The scenario that we ended up with Drew Holiday is just an opportunity. It just fell into our lap. Dallas is going to need some things like that to start happening to them if they want to be able to compete. But other than that, I think they have a really good base. Lively will be better next year, will he not? I mean, he's the youngest guy to ever play in the finals.
Oh, for sure.
I'd be really excited about that. I thought he had a couple silly fouls of being a little over aggressive at times, but I enjoyed him not being scared.
He's playing in the finals on the road, and you don't think that crowd matters, but I think when you're 19 years old, I think the crowd could impact you a little bit. And I think this experience is going to be great for him.
Anything else on the NBA Finals before we do the legacy updates?
Well, I brought up the rosters, and Derek Jones Jr. is not under contract for next year, but pretty much the rest of the team is, and I think it will help. They got some of their role players at the deadline, as well as Lively is rookie, so a whole off season. So I think that they can put some things together, but they're in the West, and just there's a lot of good teams. So I don't think you just pencil it in that they're going to return to the finals. I think that it was completely overblown. They got on a bit of a hot streak, and that they were the best backcourt in NBA history. Yeah, that got out of hand pretty quick.
Well, I think if every team is trying to be Boston, where we have a roster of multiple guys that is not only flexible on offense with multiple threats, but is switchable on defense. Every team wishes they had that. When you don't have that, your next best bet is what Dallas is doing. Is we have 2 awesome guys. Let's just put as many people around them as we can and hope that we can maneuver a way to win.
That's more like the traditional way to build a team. They did the big 3 for a while, but I think it's the way they've structured the contracts to make it harder, and that it is more of like, can we get 2 really good guys together and try to build around them? And I think that's just more traditional, and just what the Celtics have been able to do. It's just the testament of Brad and coaching, and there's probably some luck involved with there. Derek White was not this shooter when he came over from the Spurs, and so he's probably worked at it as well. It's just a team where each guy can play offense and defense, and it's been talked about a bunch today. Just every guy had to sacrifice at some level. Tatum could have taken more shots. Brown could have taken more shots. Drew could have been, asking like, "Hey, did you see how well I played in some of these, early games? Like, I want you to run some plays for me." But I think it just worked out, and it'll be interesting to see going forward, because you get the championship, but now it's, I want the championship and more of the recognition. But for right now, I think it really worked out that they were a likable group, and that I think every guy at some level had to sacrifice something that they were good at.
It's not easy to do. It's not easy to set up.
Nope.
It's going to be really hard for anyone else to pull something off. All right, legacy updates. Boston's now won a championship. That means a lot of things. So let's just kind of go through these one by one. Joe Mazzulla, second row Joe, never a doubt. Oh, God, I just, he got the job done. He didn't screw up. He didn't do anything. I actually have grown to like him a little bit more. He's got a really quirky personality. I think he's a new modern Belichick of just playing with the media constantly with either weird answers or confusing answers or short stuff that just is so unrelated that it's just like a complete distraction. I think he's getting better at it. I'm definitely getting a little bit more comfort with it. I didn't think I could point out nearly as many mistakes this year as in past years, but that also is just a little bit more of a reflection of this team just needs to play like the team, and it's fine. There isn't like a certain strategy of like, hey, guys, we need to get back to this. It's like, no, you just play together defensively, play together offensively, and shoot a bunch of threes, and we're going to win in the long run. I thought he was really disciplined in staying in that philosophy, and I give him more credit because I might have bullied other coaches in the past into trying to alter that when that wasn't working in a lot of games this year. But in the long run, some real dominant wins, and he's a really young coach that is just set up for who knows what now. I mean, what is the limit for Joe Mazzulla? What's the ceiling?
It's just unusual for someone this young to get this many opportunities. It's a super weird way that it happened, and just last year was so weird. Where he got the job, but then it's the old coaches, assistants, and so I think that really helped this year to have the off season to just digest what happened last year, get the guys around you that can support you. Where there were probably some guys last year going, well, why'd this guy get the job? Like, look at this guy. Like, he's not even calling timeouts, and he's supposed to call timeouts. Like, I should be the one sitting there. And now he's got a championship. He's the youngest champion coach since Bill Russell, and that's when Bill was a player coach, and a long time ago. So in the modern era, by far the youngest, and I just again plopped in this like super excellent situation, and is like the most winningest coach at that age in the first two seasons. And, this team is going to be locked in for a while, so he can continue to grow with them. And I think he can get smarter. I think he can continue to work with Brad, with his assistants, reviewing, I think he's still willing to learn, being so young, where it's not an older guy of, all right, finally, almost like, Al, like Al's like, towards the very end of his career, at the opposite end of just like, oh, finally, like I got this up. Like I don't think Mazzulla is going to just kind of rest and just be like, oh, cool, I got one. Yep, that's good for me. I think he's going to get after it. I think he wants to get better.
You mentioned Brad Stevens. It does, at least I have the feeling that there's some pretty good chemistry between what Stevens was building and what Mazzulla was coaching. It doesn't seem like there was any conflicting issues with there. The guys that Stevens was able to build the roster around, Mazzulla had no problem playing. I know that's kind of a problem in some other organizations. You have a GM that builds this team and thinks it needs to play a certain way, and then you have a coach that says, well, I think these guys should be used like this, and maybe that's the right way to use it, maybe it's not. There's a little bit of Moneyball kind of stuff going on in there, but the Midas touch.
The owner comes in and says, hey, I want this former All-Star. I want this flashy guy.
Yeah, I need to
make it happen.
I need to sell tickets.
You get him in here no matter what. We got to put butts in seats. And then it, from the GM goes down to the coach saying, yeah, figure it out. It's like, well, I thought you wanted like to win a championship. Like this guy had some deficiencies there. Like, well, you figure it out. We got orders from up top.
That being said, the Brad Stevens resume continues to grow. Everything he touches turns to gold. He's just built an analytical masterpiece of a team here that was, I guess, almost in some ways not traditional, but in other ways very fundamental and very, very together. It was a good team with good chemistry, and you could see it throughout the year. I don't know how do you give more credit
talk
to
about
a
how
guy?
Young Mazzulla is. as a GM, Brad's 47. I gotta imagine that's on the younger side for a GM. And yeah, like you said, it's one thing to be a college coach, and then you get bumped up, and he wasn't even a Power Five coach. He was a mid major and had success. And then comes to the Celtics and goes through a bit of a rebuild, able to figure that out, able to over deliver several times. But then that doesn't mean okay, you graduate to a GM. It's different skills, or you go for some sort of power play. And Ainge, kind of seemed like he was ready to go out, and you say, I want to do both. I want to be the coach and the GM. And we've seen that fail dramatically many times recently. And just good for him to know, no, I want to be behind the scenes more. I don't want to be on the court. I want a different challenge, and just for how successful he's been able to be.
Everyone around him somehow finds ways to just do their job, and he just finds the right people. It's awesome. It's a great legacy update for him. Let's see how much more that continues to grow. Next legacy update, Jason Tatum. I have a new kind of bold future prediction for Tatum. I think the playmaking we saw yesterday is a little bit more of how we're going to see, I'll say, next phase. I don't even call it phase 2. Maybe 2.0 of Jason Tatum. I think he's going to be known as more of a passer going forward, especially with this sort of team around him. I think he might have came in the league thinking he's going to be a high post scorer, and he's definitely still going to have opportunities to show that. But I think the real strength is going to be drawing double teams and kicking the ball out, and it isn't going to be this awful step back 3-jumper. It's going to be, I can't believe Tatum had 12 assists. I think going into next year, he might be doing Jokic type of stuff of having double-digit assists very, very consistently, and I don't know how the rest of the league will be able to control that once he's comfortable doing it. I could see him kind of stepping into the role every game of this finals. And the more everyone talked about how poorly he was shooting, the more it was like he's just finding other guys and they're getting the job done. It's great. I'm so much more comfortable and enjoy watching him play this way than the other way. I mean, he took a bunch of awful step back threes just yesterday. Like, if you take those out of yesterday's game, I mean, how much better does his game look? Like, I'm ready to eliminate those.
I think he can make him work.
Yeah, you want him to keep shooting?
I think he can make him work because I think it opens everything up. I think it opens up other things, and I think that he's young enough that it shouldn't just be shelved.
Yeah, I actually think
Maybe less. I'd be fine. I'd be fine with less. But I think in his situation, like I said, with the amount of times that he was driving and the type of defense he had to play every once in a while, it's just easy shot. I'm just gonna take a step back and just try to take a big swing here.
His defense, you keep bringing it. His defense is great. He was targeted the most by Dallas in games 1 and 2 in the pick and roll, and obviously that didn't go well. So then game 3, he was targeted the least out of any of the Celtics, and that also didn't go well. So they just couldn't find the right guys to attack. I think they got a little cute trying to counter with we were going at Luka and Kyrie so much. They were like, well, we should go at Tatum and Brown, and that just didn't. They never really seemed to figure out how that was a better option than going at Horford or someone else. I mean, they kept going at Hauser too. I didn't think that worked once this whole series. That was a trap and a half of like thinking, well, we'll get Hauser on the switch. He's coming off the bench. He's cold. He's not going to do nothing. And again, just did his job. Did a great job sticking his nose in on defense. I would very much like to keep Hauser on this team. I hope I'd be disappointed to see him go somewhere else. I think that's an important piece of the bench to have for us. Other legacy updates. Jaylen Brown, Finals MVP, Eastern Conference MVP. Tatum was All NBA. Jaylen Brown was not All NBA. Tatum was All NBA first team too. It wasn't just one of the 3 teams.
Top 5.
I think this is important. I think this is a good balance. I think that's kind of how I felt for the year as well. I thought Tatum was awesome in the regular season, and I think he deserved to be All NBA, and I think he could easily be a regular season MVP of the right circumstances. But I also love that Jaylen Brown can be a Finals MVP, and I don't even have a hard time arguing it. Like, it's just awesome that we have guys like this that could just flip-flop and be the best player in a series. Well, I mean, always been in the mix now. Has also been in a ton of playoff games, tons of numbers, tons of stats, physicality, highlight dunks, big blocks.
Not just in a lot of playoff games. These two guys have been in a lot of playoff games together. So it's a shorthand. It's not Luka and Kyrie, they've been in playoffs together. They've been in a lot of different, games, high pressure, but you're talking like, oh, like this with with the Jays, it's quick shorthand. Oh, remember what happened in 2020 here, in the bubble? Like, oh yeah, like, all right, yeah, I remember this. Okay, this is what I want to do. Like, we can't let this happen again. Or, I think we can really take advantage of this. I think that it's gonna make 2 + 2 higher than 4.
Drew Holiday now has 2 championships, 2 rings, and I don't think either of those teams could have done it without him. I've seen a lot of maybe Marcus Smart hate of just being brought up of like we couldn't do it, we had to get rid of him to do all of this, and I'm not saying we couldn't have done it, but there are things that Drew Holiday did for this team that I don't think Marcus could have ever done, or at least wouldn't have done on certain stages.
I'm just thinking of even some of the earlier rounds when it was tight, like against the Pacers, where they gave us like all they could, and there were it was a sweep, but there were close games. And when Drew it's under 2 minutes, and all of a sudden guys can't dribble anymore because Drew's around them, and guys are turning the ball over, and they're not even getting a shot off because of what Drew's doing, and just locking them absolute up.
Horford now has another championship after 2 back-to-back college runs in Florida. I think that's enough for a Hall of Fame case, especially when you factor in the amount of playoff games he's been in, the amount of playoff wins he has, the amount of playoff minutes he has. I think they were saying his first playoff series was actually against the Celtics in 2008. And if you remember correctly, That was round 1, and it goes 7.
That went 7.
There's a scenario where anything can happen in Game 7. Once it goes 7, who knows? We could have not won in 2008, and Atlanta could have moved on. And I'm not saying they would have went on and won, but there's a lot of what ifs for Al. There's some disappointing years. There's some moves where it made sense and it just didn't work out. Some worthy gambles, some not worthy gambles. But I hope he always views Boston as a home, even though he's certainly traveled a little bit around in certain parts of the league. But he's got my Hall of Fame vote. I certainly think there are guys with worse resumes getting in, and what a fun guy to root for. Like, really, I don't know what else to say.
Excellent dude. We knew last year with Rob getting hurt, it's just like Al can't be like the full-time guy. And I really think because this year with Porzingis, and we were able to rest him so much throughout the season. He didn't play back-to-backs. Just anytime he needed a rest, he got a rest. And I really think that helped us for the playoffs when we did have to turn it up a little more. He wasn't just absolutely toast from a long season. I agree with you. I think he's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer regardless of what happens going forward, because it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. It's not the NBA Hall of Fame. But it was cool. It seemed like I'd see on X after every game his playoff numbers and saying, he just passed X in rebounds, Y in steals, and Z in blocks, and it's all guys that you've heard of. And it's like, wow, he's going past these very well known guys, and just every time, just longevity, just taking along.
All right, Dallas legacy updates. I feel like we kind of already talked about Luka a little bit. I mean, is he the best player was really the only question. What can he get better at? I think defense is the easy one. I think we're always going to wish he didn't complain as much, but I think there's a certain character of just who he is, and there's a part that I don't think you could always control, and that just comes with the good, and you could hope for better, but I don't know what other. I mean, what else could you ask for him? What else can he do? That's awesome. He's still giving you a whole lot of stuff.
Yep.
Jason Kidd, I thought he made as many attempts as you can from the sidelines to try to impact this game, whether it was bulletin boards, silly quotes. I thought he actually did a pretty good job with his rotation, giving certain guys chances. Hardaway Jr. was just a failed project for this whole series, but I actually was impressed with what Jason Kidd did. I thought he had actually coached very well, and I don't know if I came into this series thinking he was for sure a good coach. I mean, everybody just doesn't have a hard time arguing with how smart of an actual NBA player he was and how long and successful a career he had. The coaching thing hasn't been as obvious, if you ask me, but I thought he was a good coach. I don't have a bunch of mistakes to point out. I don't think there was things that he should have done differently, but I don't think I had that legacy as Jason Kidd as a solid coach coming into this that I kind of do now. My overachieving a little bit on this. What do you think?
This definitely puts him more in the right direction. He has the playing career to fall back on. But if he didn't, I mean, I think he'd already be done as a coach if he even got the opportunity. I mean, when he did the goofy, had a guy bump into him so he'd spill his water so he'd get an extra timeout. I think that's a visual that lives on. And I mean that's still a while ago, but then forces his way from the Nets to the Bucks, and just a lot of dings. Like, not one really awful thing, but just a bunch of just like, is this guy
Well, yeah.
is this guy for real? But you make it to the finals, you make it with a fifth seed. They weren't expected to make it to the finals. I think this helps kind of. I think this bumps it up a little bit, and I think that this will help for expectations for his teams in the future. Of, well, remember he brought that 2024 team to the finals. Maybe he can do it with this team.
He definitely has moments where he flirts with the line of genius and stupidity. It's like, was getting the technical foul by having the guy bump into you with the cup of water genius or stupid? Because
stupid.
It worked.
You know how you know if it's genius or
wise.
stupid? If it's stupid, no one does it after you. If it's genius, everybody does it after you.
I don't think it's an opportunity you constantly get. It's a small window that he went out and took. I look. I don't want guys doing it. I don't want. It's
a goofball move
for sure. But in terms of, I'm a coach that is ultra competitive and I'm trying to do whatever I can. It's a desperation that most coaches would never reach for, and I'm almost giving him credit for trying to pull it off. Legacy update. Kyrie Irving. I'm at peace. I don't care anymore. I think now that we've won, to be upset over old stuff that didn't relate to a championship, perhaps it was a potential one, but it wasn't a real championship. There's a whole lot of what ifs you could have said about this team, even before Kyrie and even after him. I think he plays a really beautiful game, and I'm happy for him. I think he should continue to play basketball the way he is, but I'm not holding any sort of vendetta over this. I think he might always have a difficult time playing in Boston just from the crowd perspective, but hey, we're the winners now, guys. We don't need to keep going at this guy anymore. He didn't win. We won. We're ahead in this game, and hopefully we continue to win more, and this shouldn't really be a thing anymore is really what I'm getting at. Are you all right with that?
I think it'll soften, but it's never going to stop being a thing, but I don't think the boos will be quite as loud. It was kind of cool that the moment I realized we were going to win the championship was when Kyrie went over and shook everybody's hand, and then I realized, like they're giving up. They're giving up with 2 minutes and change to go. It was probably over, but like this is over. This is over, and it was really cool that then we got to do like a cascade of every ball stoppage. Some of the team going out, so they were all able to get an ovation. That is not something every team gets. So I thought that was cool.
That was the last legacy update I had. Do you have anything else from the 2024 basketball playoffs? I mean, this is it. I don't know what we're gonna do next week. We're gonna have to do some Drake May stuff. We do have a couple more other topics to get to.
We can't go to Drake May that fast.
What are we gonna do? We're officially in summer topics now.
We're gonna have to do a second. We're gonna have to do a second championship talk because we can't. Football is gonna be rough this year, so I don't know if I want to make that switch so quickly. But just overall, it was a great year. The whole year, regular season playoffs, we only lost 6 games at home. In the regular season, we had a 7-game lead over anybody else. So for sure, we probably lost some more games in the playoffs if everyone was all super duper healthy, but I don't think that diminishes this title at all. We proved in the regular season we were the best team. We didn't get some flash in the pan at the very last second, as well as in the playoffs, we had a guy. We had one of our starters. Not our best player, but a very crucial player that he was hurt. So, that'll even some stuff out.
Is there anything?
It was a fun year. I mean, when we were on, Halliburton was hurt in that Indy game, but we could just not miss from 3 and we beat them by 50 points. I think it was the first time a team had won by 50 points 3 times. You can argue with it, that with threes, this is going to happen more often, where one team just gets really hot and the other one doesn't on the variance. But we were, I think it was a top 5 net rating team for the season. So, that puts you up there with other with great teams, and at least puts you in the conversation. You can argue with it. Okay, it doesn't look like one with the players, or well, they haven't accomplished all of this yet. But I think we're going to look back and realize we had a really really good team and a really special team, and the whole ride was a lot of fun.
I think what I will remember this team the most as is just a killer road team. I don't know what the numbers are, but there was just a confidence on the road that you don't get with almost any other team. Like there are numbers that show that Tatum was better on the road consistently throughout these playoffs. Like that's an awesome thing to have. That's a weapon that you're just taking away from the other team, saying like, all right, cool, have your home court advantage. We play better here. You can make some noise. You can boo me a little bit more. My shooting percentage goes up. That is what I will remember the most out of this team, and just how much of a team it was.
In the regular season, we were 27-14, and then would have had the one loss in Game 4 on the road. So only 15 losses total on the road.
All right, they have scheduled the parade. The parade is Friday. I don't know if you're familiar with the East Coast weather, specifically the Boston area. We're in a heat advisory at the moment, and not just like, hey, it's going to be a little warm outside, like, drink some water today, buddy. Like 95, 96, 97 degree humidity, hot heat. I'm a little worried about this parade. I agreed that I would go with you. I'm not backing out at all, but how hot does it have to be before I'm excused from going? Like, is there any scenario where I can get out of this?
What are you concerned is going to happen?
Like, I'm not crazy about a huge, large crowd event sort of thing to begin with, and the fact that it's going to be unbearably hot in a crowded area where you're not going to be able to find a bathroom or anywhere else to find any sort of relief, as well as you're going to spend 2 hours walking in a big crowd to only spend 4 hours parked in a car while trying to get out. Like, there's pros and cons to it all right. I've always envisioned going to the parade and it being a little bit more enjoyable out there, rather than being like, I need to get out of here, it is way too hot.
Well, the heat advisory is getting cleared on Thursday. So by Friday, it's only going to be in the 80s. It's going to be a gorgeous day. It's going to be a gorgeous day. Everyone's going to be in a great mood. It's going to be on Friday. So people are going to be getting out of work early. It's going to be a really fun party. Everyone's going to be in a great mood. You can't miss it. You can't miss it. We'll bring you some ice waters. We'll keep you hydrated. I'll bring you some, what is that? Like some like those neck cooler things. I'll find some of those. We'll keep you nice and cool.
Yeah, you're gonna say that, and your cooling is gonna be, here's another beer. It's like, yeah, that's hydrating. That's good. We're not gonna get heat stroke now. We're responsible adults. We'll just.
Well, yeah, you hold that in your hand. It keeps your hands cold, and then you drink it, and it keeps you cold. Yeah, this is just science, Will.
Look,
it's just science.
No.
This is just parade science.
Yeah,
Everybody knows this. All champions know this.
Don't hit me with the Bill Nye science nonsense when it's like, yes, this is how we're gonna drink warm beer in a big crowd, sweating profusely for hours while we can't get out. Like that. Yeah, that sounds like a fun time to you.
This just sounds like it just. You're trying to whatever, like finding like the reverse of a silver lining is. If you went to a Patriots parade, that's in February. Then then you're dealing with a New England winter. This is just how it is. It's gonna be hot. But how many other cities would have put up with this? You think it would have been cooler in Dallas?
I mean, they sold tickets for the road games when Dallas was when we were playing the games in Dallas. Can I just stay in the air-conditioned stadium and watch it on the Jumbotron with a big crowd? I mean, that's the same thing. How's that any different?
I don't think they have that as an option, but with all that heat, I could see people being interested in that.
I mean, you get to sit down. I mean, you're not going to sit in the parade, which is part of the excitement.
No.
It's a parade. It's not a stadium thing. It's a moving thing. It's a live event. Anything can kind of happen, and that's part of the excitement and part of the joy. I'm a little worried that it's so much after all of this that, I mean, how hungover are these guys going to be by Friday, where it's like another day of this, another day of that, and it's like, wait a minute, now we have to do the fan one where we actually got to be in public and celebrate. We're going though. I don't see any reason not to, but I'm I'm already preparing you for very high maintenance. Will. In other news around the league, let's just hit a couple of quick topics here. These are quick hitters. Jeff Van Gundy, who was a advisor for the Celtics this year, is going to be an assistant coach for the LA Clippers. I'm excited to see him back on the sideline. I wonder if he had interest in doing the sideline thing for Boston, or if there just wasn't room, or if he just didn't want to actually get his hands-on and as hands-on involved as he could. So I think it's a step forward. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a good coach. I think he helped us in ways this year that we'll never really know, but I do think he was a helpful aide, and I do think he'll be a good coach for the Clippers. Does this change anything? Does it move the needle for you at all?
It doesn't really move the needle for me. I'm just more surprised. He hasn't coached, or the last time he coached was in 2004. So over 20 years ago, he did the announcing for 16 years. It's just being a coach is hard. You don't sleep. You're constantly on the road, and I'm surprised that he's getting back into it. I would have thought he would have, maybe if he kind of felt like with the Celtics, hey, I accomplished what my goal was, and then was kind of a special advisor over there. You're kind of behind the scenes. I got to imagine the travel and everything is easier, but to become the lead assistant, like you're not the guy, but you're like kind of one of the guys.
Well,
if Lou gets booted,
that's in all honesty what it is I'm in a world where we're constantly firing and replacing coaches. I'm next guy up, and I get to kind of play with the same in-house that I'm familiar with rather than go an entirely new house. So that's the advantage, I think, the angle he's going at. I don't know what would really be holding him back from being a head coach. So part of me thinks he's pretty particular on the teams he does want to be in. And I like that. I like that he's just not up for sale and going just anywhere.
I mean, we think about him as, oh no, it's Jeff Van Gundy, the coach, and then he was an announcer. He was a head coach for 11 years, and then he announced for 16. So I mean, he was for sure an assistant before that, but he was an announcer for more years than he was a head coach. So it was an interesting move. I was surprised to see that.
I think younger generations will think this is like a stepping stone. Like, oh yeah, good for Van Gundy. Just finally found his way there. It's like, no,
yeah,
that's not true. That's not true at all. Like, this guy has a resume. He's coached players that are definitely Hall of Famers. There are epic highlights of him on the sideline and multiple places. He's had a really good career. This is hardly a stepping stone for him. It's just a choice of direction and career. And I wish him nothing but luck. Good luck with the non-information of Kawhi Leonard, the offseason of Paul George. Like, there's a lot of...
Oh, speaking of Kawhi, we got to get him off the Olympics team. We got to get Jaylen Brown in the Olympics team. You're the finals MVP. You should be competing for the country.
Well, I mean, Kawhi may be injured already, so there's... They might not have to...
I don't want to play this game in the Olympics of, well, if Kawhi plays, yeah, he's really good. Just... You want a guy that's... not afraid of a big moment, can play defense on the best players in the world. We got one. He's ready to go. He's hammered right now because he's celebrating a championship, but he'll be good in a month.
Just go get healthy. Stay healthy. Have fun. We don't need him. It's not like he's going to be the difference maker and that we aren't going to win the Olympics without him. We'll be all right.
I don't know, man. It's been pretty close these past couple of years.
Speaking of events not having the stars, July 4th, Nathan's Hot Dog will not be the same contest as always. Joey Chestnut will not be participating. And I ask you, does anyone care, or is now this contest an actual contest because it's between normal humans?
I think this, that even though Joey has been winning this and winning this convincingly for a while, so there has not been a lot of drama. I don't think having him not be in it and then having more drama helps the event at all. I have some more conspiracy thoughts on this. Both sides, I think, are losing out on money doing this. But what I think is happening, and then we found out pretty quickly afterwards, now there's going to be a head-to-head Joey Chestnut versus Kobayashi Netflix special in September. So, okay, there's some of the money. But I'm thinking this is a like there's some stuff kind of going behind the scenes that, all right, yeah, we're gonna ban him this year. No, like he wants to do it, but like we're not gonna let him, and this is gonna happen. But it's still kind of shady. And then all of a sudden, next year around this time, there's gonna be like an announcement. After 1 year away, Joey Chestnut will be making his triumphant return because it's a hot dog eating contest. It's a little bit of WWE. Not that it's not real, but there's a lot of performance to it. If you watch it, there's a whole entrance, and it's it doesn't take very long. It's like the main competitive eating thing of the year. So I think that there's a little bit of this is orchestrated, and that this is not a forever thing, and that I think it's just to make it an even bigger event next year.
That being said, if someone is going to win this year, and it is not going to be Joey Chestnut, are we comfortable with actually giving this person the crown, the belt for however being, or do we all know in the back of our minds that there's a guy out there that needs double of what this winner's ever going to do?
I think that's what's going to happen. Awesome. You're the winner this year. Joey didn't compete, but when the number comes up and it's 42, and we know Joey has hit in the 60s and even into the 70s, it's just a little just shrug the shoulders. Okay, cool, enjoy it.
I have not watched this as nearly as much as growing up. It's just not as it's gross.
It's super gross.
But it's also like I just wanted to see the competition and being like, how many can he do? And for a while there, it was like he was going up like one dog a year. Even sometimes it's just like I ate half of more than he did last year. It's like absurd. But it was a limit that's been pushed, and then it was for a little bit there of like, yeah, he just gets 70 every year, and if he doesn't, it's an off year. It's like,
and no one comes close. And I think he even mentioned, he's like, I wish someone was better to push me, because it's hard to push yourself.
And I think we got tired of watching him push himself. We've seen that show, and it's just not. I mean, it's impressive. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's really good at what he does. No one's gonna be better at him. I don't think
about the Olympics. He's an American hero.
Yeah, I just don't think this event is going to survive this. I think this is going to be player empowerment 101 right here, being like, yeah, you take away your main guy and go ahead, try to make a new star. Maybe you will. I have a hard time thinking they will. All right, real quick, getting out of here. Hard Knocks is doing it in season. They did it last year. I believe last year they did it for one team, though. And this year they're going to be doing it for an entire division.
They're doing it for an entire division, and was wondering, does this move the needle for you at all? Like, now there could be some more drama where you're seeing not just one team. You'd be seeing what's going on in the Steelers locker room versus what's going on in the Ravens locker room, and kind of how they're preparing for each other. There's not really any trade secrets or anything, but does this interest you any more than just being one team in season?
Well, I think that there are storylines in games that happen throughout the year where you hope that, or at least I think you wish that you had a little bit more of a behind-the-scenes look. And I think with this, it gives you a little bit more options of, well, if we pick the wrong team and the storylines are really lame, at least we can maybe have the other team that we didn't even think this was going to happen this year, and now we have access to it. I also think it puts a little less attention on just one team and spreads it out. And I think if you're any of the other teams, you enjoy that. I don't think you want all of the attention. Like, nobody's upset by sharing the spotlight with the other three teams in the division, right? Like, I don't think anyone's. Well, what team is like, no, I want to be the head. Like,
yeah, we want you at practice more.
So I think that's a win for everyone. I think it's a decent compromise, and I think overall it should hopefully bring a better product with just better storylines from the better teams.
I don't think you're going to get the better storylines. I think that everyone's just too aware, and everyone, is just very media savvy and knows exactly what they say and how it's going to be, perceived in the sound bites. And really, I like the first couple of episodes of Hard Knocks, because it's like we haven't had football in months, and then you kind of remember there, it's just like, yeah, this is just kind of, there's not really a ton to this, and usually I finish it through, because it's only like 5 or 6 episodes. It's really not that long. But the in-season one, this doesn't debut until December. I'm not tired of football by December, but I'm getting all the football that I need. College, pro by December. Now we've got pro and college basketball. It's just I don't need the reality show part of it.
I think they're just so sold on the more we cover the sport, the more money it prints, and that it doesn't even need to be like an actual entertaining positive. It's just more coverage that makes more money. It's that simple, because I haven't really watched any of them, and if I do watch them, I watched the preseason one, and maybe I watched the last one where somebody's got to get cut that you never even heard of, and heard some, puppy dog story.
The soft generation, they got rid of that. They're not doing that the past year or two. They don't do the cuts anymore.
Well, I haven't watched the last couple of years, and maybe that's why.
Yeah, they say it was too it was too much.
It's funny, they'll give you all the drama on the draft where it's like, yeah, give me all these sob stories now, and then that one was too much. Look, it is a lot. It is, and it's also a complicated business of. I think other teams, like we've been, I think some of the teams that see these guys get cut in Hard Knocks and they try them out in the Patriots. Like I want to say Danny Woodhead was one of those guys. I think he was cut by the Jets and Hard Knocks, and then we signed him, and he was a good player for us. And I had no idea who he was until that show. So I don't know if we're having enough stories like that, but unless you're discovering more moments like that, I don't know if it's really as rewarding. All right, anything else for the people out there?
Always fun to do a championship podcast with you, Will. I'm glad that this isn't our only one, and hopefully we have even more coming in the future.
Please subscribe. Little column A, little column B. You can follow Zach on his Twitter account, which is
WickedZman24.
We'll be back next week on Monday with summer topics? ? I don't know.
Draft.
You're right.
Draft preview.
We'll be back. Go Celtics.
I'm giving you a Tommy point.